right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Most Important Conversations, where I'm talking with Dan Silberberg for our regular episode around leadership, the leadership by design. What is leadership? Ontological leadership, all of the things that we talk about and deal with in whole life architecture and our leadership work. And Dan, I've been really thinking the last couple of days actually about, and I'm just going to create a bit of a trifecta of three concepts. One is choice. Okay. Another is belief, the role of belief as a leader, the role of choice as a leader, and how those two things relate to the creator leader, the leader as creator. And the thing that's really struck me, and just to kind of set the table, and then I want to invite you to jump in here, is that most human beings, including most leaders, are in some kind of experiential reaction to what's going on external to them versus being the creator of who they're choosing to be in the moment, choosing to be, choosing what they believe, that all belief is a choice, actually, when it comes right down to it. We can say that if you ask someone, why do you believe this? That person will usually say, well, because of this, this, this. They'll give you some sort of rationalization around why they believe it. But if you kept drilling and drilling and drilling down, ultimately it just comes to, well, I choose to believe that. That's really the bottom line, because none of those things justify absolutely why any of us believe what we believe. We believe it because we believe it. We choose to believe it, right? So this is the nature of belief. And then as creator, we understand that we are at choice at all times when we're coming from the creator place. So creator leaders understand, and they take the responsibility, the ability to respond to what's going on in the world from a place of choice, not reaction. Not like their arm is being twisted to respond in a certain way or to react in a certain way, but rather they know who they are, they know where they're coming from, they know what it is that they're trying or committed rather to creating as creator, and therefore they are stepping forward from a place of power in choice, and their beliefs that are wrapped in the choices they're making, they also are choosing those beliefs. So there's nothing external to them driving how or who they show up to be. So I want to start with that and let you kind of riff on that.
Yeah, a couple of things. So there is an existential principle of being the creator. And one can argue that the biggest fear of a human being is to accept responsibility that the life that I have actually came from the inside out. It wasn't the
Right.
external event. It's me. If I want to see what life I have, can I own that I created it?
Right.
While that may be fearful for some, it's where the power sits of, you know what, I created this. I don't like it. I'm going to make a different choice. In order to do that, I have to actually find myself in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm finding myself in my past, in shame, in guilt, in a pattern that I've had for a long time, it's now become a part of my identity. I don't have that freedom. Likewise, if I'm going to look at the future and be anxious, I wonder if the decision I'm going to make is going to work out. What will people think, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
that becomes also, I shrink and then I sit more in victimhood. So
Mm-hmm.
this idea is that in the present moment, not only do you have choice, it's where your power is. It's the only place you can create from. I'll give you an example. So I grew up as a boy. I had a father who was extremely irresponsible with anger. My experience is that when men yell at me, I shrink, I cower, I want to hide. There's a whole list of behaviors that come to that. So now I'm in business. I'm running a $500 million division. I go up to see the CEO and he tells me what he's unhappy with. I don't hear him. What I hear
Mm-hmm.
is my father yelling at me,
Yep.
telling me I'm not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can choose now to go, that CEO respects me. He's coming with a point of constructive criticism. He has goodwill, or I wouldn't be on his team. Now I have a choice to actually listen to him, and I can be in conversation now because I'm not in my past where I don't even see him or hear him.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of self-awareness is critical because we hear so much about leaders and different styles of leadership. The one thing I've never seen a framework for is, what does it mean to be an authentic leader? And I think
Mm,
what we're talking about,
yeah.
who are we as our true self? Do we know our red lines? Do we know what triggers us? When it does trigger us, are we enough to go, you know what, I need to take a couple of breaths, step back, get myself located again,
Self-regulate. Yep.
right? So all of these things, I think, are absolutely critical. And the beauty of being able to do that is, the more I do that in myself, the more I'm able to do that with others, the more I'm
Yeah.
able to see them, to know them, to recognize them, to acknowledge them, not to be so much in scarcity and fear and zero sum.
Yeah. Now, the challenge for people, I think, is that for leaders in particular, is we live in a society right now where a lot of leaders have so much on their shoulders. They're handling and managing so much. They're not delegating as well as they could or should. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be ego. It could be cutbacks. We don't have the budget. It could be a lack of trusting someone else to actually handle, what needs to get done in a particular way. And as a result of that, most leaders are just in constant reaction to what's showing up from one thing to the next to the next. So in order to do what you're talking about, to be the creator, first of all, what you said at the beginning, I thought was interesting, which is true. The only place you can create from is a place of presence. Why? Because creation has to come from no thing, meaning I'm not dragging the past into what I'm about to create. At best, that would be called innovation, but creativity happens from no thing by definition. Now, in order to get to that place of no thingness and get into the present moment, you have to slow down.
Mhm.
You've got, and so this reaction and this moving so quickly, putting out the fires, as they say, in the business world, we're constantly just putting out fires and in reaction to everything that's showing up. That's a leader that is not actually leading. They're being led by the external circumstances that they're in reaction to,
Right.
which is why most leaders fail as leaders, because they're not leading, they're being led. Almost like, used to lead a horse around, by the nose kind of thing. What's leading a lot of these leaders is, ego, looking good, and being in reaction to the moment to maintain the ego and the looking good.
Yeah, so take a look at the role play and the system in which a leader operates, right? So a leader can come in and be authentic and find themselves in a system that won't reward that. So what
Hmm.
happens is, you now need to be a superstar CEO. You need to be Jack Welch. You need to be Jamie Dimon. You need to be Elon Musk. That's great for narcissism and individualism. That's not great for leading an organization,
Right.
right? So what happens in the role? I'm not supposed to make a mistake. I shouldn't take too much risk because it might not work out. So I can't do anything iteratively. I will delay my decision making, which confronts my teams because they're looking for direction, because they're used to me telling them what to do. These are all roles that happen to a CEO.
Right.
If we change the system, then we change how they get to show up. So
Right.
what we're talking about, you can do it in a toxic, what I call a toxic system, but that's why the average CEO today lasts 3 to 3.5 years,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think
So
it's
we need new system architects who are leaders to help
exactly.
reinvent and recreate the systems that the leaders are operating inside of, because it goes to Buckminster Fuller's idea that environment is more powerful than willpower. And so the systemic environment in which these leaders are existing are creating the conditions where they're in a perpetual and constant reaction to everything going on outside of them.
Yeah, and the other thing that Bucky said is, don't try to band-aid something or make it better, make it obsolete.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hierarchy needs to go the way of the past. It served in the 20th century, doesn't really serve today.
Sure.
Leaders today, role-wise, are put at the top. Actually, if you want to be a leader in the 21st century, you're at the bottom. And one of the key questions is, what is your relationship to power?
Right.
And if your relationship to power is top down, command and control, do as you're told, fit in, that creates a funnel going this way. And what you said about in the presence and the no thing,
Hmm.
that presence is what creates limitless possibility.
Right.
Okay. So now, if I could be present to say, I'd like a new system, I'd like a way of engaging to create deeper engagement with my team, to empower my team, to have them make better decisions in the moment, I will need a different system. I will need a different way. I will accept that I'm somebody who coaches. I'm somebody who mentors. I'm somebody who removes resistance. I'm somebody who thinks at the very high level of strategy, and I don't get steeped in the functional play of the game every day. So
Hmm.
many CEOs are still playing in function. That's not a role. That's not a
Right.
leader role. That's a
Right.
manager role. And
Yeah.
that's just a role of, can I make you accountable? That's not leading.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I want to bring in another idea here, though, and this is the concept of belief, and its relationship to choice and all of this. And the thing about belief is that, we can look at, so-called, I say so-called leaders because uh, my thinking of leadership is sort of along the lines of what you and I are talking about. So I don't know what to call the other form of leadership that has existed. Um, so I'm going to call it so-called leadership until we come up with another word for it. But so this so-called leadership that is in reaction to all of the conditions that are, just arriving in front of the leader to react to. Um, and the relationship to belief is an interesting one if we kind of dig into it. So when someone's operating from ego, there's this sort of false identity that's created about who they are in the world. And it's usually the ego is meant to win at the game that exists. So the systems and structures that already exist, the question that the person behind the ego, the beingness behind the ego is asking is, how do I get validated and win at this game? I'm going to create this persona and win at that game. The problem that a lot of leaders eventually run into, however, is that it's not authentically who they are. So it's like you can only keep the charade up for so long, and eventually
Mhm.
your actual authentic self will eat away at you, and you'll have, the midlife crisis or whatever is going to, come for you. Um, and then this leads me to the question of belief, because on the surface, optically, if I'm checking all the boxes of how to win at this game from an ego standpoint, what's behind it is usually, in many cases at least, an absence of true belief and knowledge in the self and who that person actually is, and a belief in their capabilities, and a belief in themselves as a creator, as someone who has the ability to create the conditions to succeed and thrive. And because that belief is not there, I'm just going to follow what everyone else does. I'm going to create the ego persona, and I'm going to win at that game. But when all of that crumbles, you're forced to go inward and ask, well, who am I? What do I believe who do I believe myself to be? What value do I believe I have and that I can bring to the table? And that's a very scary place for a lot of people, because that has not been something that most people have ever dealt with, likely. And even if they did, it probably hasn't been something that, getting to that sort of inner core of the essence of who we are usually hasn't been done since we were children. So there's all these unhealed wounds and all this baggage that gets unlocked there. But where I'm going with this is, I believe that one's belief in themselves creates a center of gravity around which other people are compelled to follow. And so we have this situation right now. I was talking with someone the other day about, the current election, and what's coming down the pipe here. And we've got all of these business billionaire leaders, so to speak, right? The Elons, the Trumps, the Bezos, And one thing I can say, whether it's sociopathologically or it's authentic, what they stand in is a belief in the value they're bringing to the world. And I always say people are either bending to the world or you're either bending to the world or the world bends to you. So this
Mhm.
implies a center of gravity. And when someone believes in themselves, the world tends to bend to them. Those who don't have belief in themselves give their power away. The vacuum sucks them into that power dynamic. So you have all the people sort of worshiping, on the Trump side of things right now. It's very illogical and from a rational standpoint when you just look at it. But people are just giving their power away. But there's nothing new. This isn't like a Trump thing. People have done this for all of history. We give our power away to those who stand in a belief of their own value, their own power, and those who don't believe in themselves and have value, they bend to the world. So the mechanic I'm talking about is the essence of leadership in a sense, because if there's no gravity to cause people, it's hard to say you're a leader if you have no followers. Well, who's going to follow a leader, right? Well, a leader who is followed by followers presumably has belief and a sense of value in what they deliver and can bring to the world that creates a center of gravity that causes the followers to bend to the leader, right? But I think that what we have are circumstances and conditions inside of companies where the system is architected that says you have to follow the leader, but
Mhm.
even the leaders don't believe in themselves a lot of the time. And so they're not creating an authentic center of gravity based on their own sense of belief and value and who they are authentically as a being. It's sort of fabricated. It's like the command and control system, the actual environment and architecture requires, as you were stating a few minutes ago, the hierarchy to be adhered to, even if the workers don't trust or believe in the leader because the leader doesn't believe in themselves. There's a
Yes,
lot there. I don't know.
I
Cherry
know.
pick whatever stands out for you on that.
Yeah, well, there's a ton to unpack. So here's the deal. It's very hard for a leader to look at themselves authentically when primary caregiver, family, early education, spiritual principles, cultural norms, and everything bleeds it out of you from
Yeah.
a very early age. So
Yeah.
when you look at my research on CEOs, this is what I know. 73% of CEOs believe they have imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
What does that mean? The underlying arc of that is I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
The underlying arc of I'm not good enough is fear I'll be found out.
Yeah.
So I'm going to deflect, I'm going to obfuscate, I'm going to defend, I'm going to blame, I'm going to do all that belief creates these beliefs create the belief internally creates a behavior that shows up externally.
Yeah.
All right. So that's one of them. When we look at that sort of thing, why do I play that way? Our deepest fear and yearning is I want to be known, I want to be accepted, I want to fit in, I want to be lovable, and the biggest fear is I will be abandoned. I'll be
Hmm.
abandoned by family. I'll be abandoned by friends. I'll be fired from my job. I'll get a divorce. All of these things strip away a sense of safety and trust and security. So what
Hmm.
happens is I will mold myself to the system. The system is where the power sits. I know I've said that
Right.
already, but
Right.
that is
Yeah.
what it is. So for you, what are the things the billionaires are able to do? They are the system.
Yeah.
One of the reasons they're able to be this power clearly is money, but the way they got there is they designed the system, and the system works the best for them.
Right.
What you call so-called leadership, I just call traditional leadership. And I'm saying there's a new world that's evolving. If you're
Hmm.
not going to evolve, you're going to be a dinosaur. That's
Yeah.
my belief. You will become extinct because whether you move your system or not, technology, speed of change, ambiguity, uncertainty, volatility, global disruption, these are things that you can no longer, as a leader, actually dominate and control.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I know that, now how do I perform the best? I perform the best when I can bring people in. We have
Hmm.
traditional leadership is I'm the leader, you're my followers. That's traditional leadership. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
21st century leadership is everyone is leading all the time.
Yeah.
And the question is, what are you leading to in our organization? And for me as a leader, I believe the number one job that I have is to create as many leaders as I can. So
Hmm.
for me, the metaphor is if I were in a mine, and you know how they have those headbands with the lights
With the
on,
light. Hmm.
I want to, if I know you and I can sense your gift, your genius, your artistry, what you're here to contribute, what I know who you could become, then that light needs to create a path for you so that you, in walking that path, will show up to be fully actualized.
Hmm.
I can do that within an ecosystem business model. I can't do that in a hierarchy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I know that's a mouthful,
No,
but
it's good.
what's so exciting to me about doing what we're doing, there is, we've talked about this before. If you're playing as a traditional leader, then you're playing in reactivity. You're playing to a belief system that may not be authentic to. You're playing to rules that really you don't abide by. In the world we're talking about, it's a knowingness. This
Yeah.
authenticity, I know it in my body. I know when I say, I believe this, I know my breathing is easier. I know I'm in my heart space. I know my chest is expansive.
Hmm.
And if we watch people on television, we can see when they get smaller. That's when we know they're in fear. They're not sure of themselves.
That's
They're
right.
all of these different things. So there's a thing about the body keeps the score.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great book. Yeah.
There's a big possibility for lead, but you know what? We have to teach that. And it's,
Hmm.
for any habit, it needs to be repetitive. It has to be over communicated. It needs to be rewarded. It needs to be incented. It needs to be, celebrated. There are a whole host of things. We are change agents. All of us as human beings have changed throughout our life. It's totally possible.
Yeah. But it begins with, since we're talking about leadership, it begins with standing in your own power as as creator and taking the responsibility of what that entails onto yourself. We talked about it before that a lot of people in our society conflate and confuse freedom with license. So the ability to do anything I want without consequence, which is license, is different than freedom because freedom is imbued with a sense of responsibility that I
Mhm.
have to take on. But if you choose to be the creator, which is a choice in your life, versus the consumer of life, consuming other people's thoughts, ideas, space, energy, models for living and working versus creating what's going to work in the moment. If you're consuming it, you're likely going to be adopting a very what I would call linear and mechanistic approach to how you're operating versus if you're a creator, now you're an ever evolving, unfolding becoming. And
Right.
you're okay with that process because you're always the creator leader at the reins, guiding what comes next. As you're taking in all of that data, you're evaluating it, you have trust of self, you know who you are, you know why you believe what you believe, you know that even your beliefs are a choice. And in this present moment, forget about what I did in the past. In this present moment, as leader, this is what's required. And you can move from that place. You can move powerfully.
Right. So, but here's what you're describing.
Yeah.
What you're describing is I have the belief that goes from I'm supposed to have the answer to I'm curious and inquiring and I'm playing iterate. See, I'm not coming up with a binary
Right.
success failure. I'm coming up with a process that's iterative. I'm going to do lots of little things, do very quick learning, and I'm going to encourage my team to be doing the same. And we will, like you said, slow down.
Yeah.
That iteration is what allows adaptive decision making, making much better decisions in the moment, not sitting in consideration of, oh my God, what if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this sort of, so again, back to the system, but it is also a belief system. How do I take this current role and move it out of what I call three dimensions? Three
Yeah.
dimensions are binary choices. Fifth dimensions say time is included, right? In which case I have the time to experiment, to see, to prove.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we go thesis, antithesis, synthesis, thesis, antithesis.
Yeah.
If I run that for a month and you're running consensus the way the industry runs, I will outdistance you on an order of magnitude, which means 10 times.
Yeah. And the economy we're moving into is going to require that level of rapid creativity, because we can't just kind of, leaders can't create a plan for the year and say this is the plan we're running on, because the
No,
change is too exponential. And the plan you set for the year will be at best challenged, if not completely disrupted, within a couple months, and you're going to have to iterate. So the other thing that you said that I thought was interesting, just as we wrap up here, um, was this idea of, I make a decision and now I'm concerned of whether or not it's going to work. Well, what is implied underneath that is that we can ever have absolute knowledge of what will work or not work, that we can control the variables in order to actually guarantee something to work. That's never been the case. When I've worked with, startups and different companies who are raising money, and we're in the capital raising process, and investors will say to us, okay, well, what's your 3 to 5 year plan? Which incidentally, I don't know how that matters anymore in this
it
moment of
doesn't.
change. Right? So what's your 3 to 5 year plan? But even way back, okay, so not now, but even at a time when there was still some kind of thought that this could actually manifest in the way it was written down on paper, I always used to say to investors, so you want a bedtime story? Because I mean, I don't know that I'm not going to get hit by a bus tomorrow. You don't know that you're not going to get hit by a bus tomorrow. We have no idea what variables. All we know is, assuming all things are constant, which they never are, this is the plan. But the problem with that is the assumption that all things are constant. So,
Yeah, well, Mike Tyson said,
yeah,
everybody's got a plan until the first hit in the
punch in the
face,
mouth. Yeah,
right? And Eisenhower said plans are good until the first bullet is shot. As
exactly. Yeah.
as an investor, for me, I would want to know, tell me your level of curiosity. So one of the things I did this week, I wanted to have a gratitude for money.
Hmm.
I created 100 reasons to have gratitude for money.
That's cool.
How many times when we have a business challenge, we sit down and we spend 10 minutes defining the problem and 50 minutes on the solution when we don't even have the problem right? But
Right.
my question would be, tell me 7 ways, 10 ways we could solve what we believe is in front of us.
Yeah.
And if it's got to be one and right, I guarantee you, not anywhere near the leadership of what 10 possibilities could be,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think there's and I really believe that for the larger companies, the biggest inhibitor to being a great leader is Wall Street,
Hmm.
because everything is about the quarter.
Yeah.
But if I look at Jeff Bezos, if I look at Jamie Dimon, if I look at Google, do you know what they all said? We don't care.
We don't
Run
care about that.
run
Yeah.
our business for the long haul.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos used to say, I'm not giving you any numbers. And if he had gone on Wall Street, he would never have all those warehouses and the brilliance of that supply chain.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but it took a different, and there's this
Different
idea
way of
of
thinking.
Steve Jobs that I bend reality to me. A
There you
lot of
go. Yeah.
people thought he's the only one that can do that. It's
Yeah.
not
No.
true.
No.
Everybody can do that.
Everybody can do that. Yep.
but you have to decide.
You have to choose. That's where we started today, the power of choice.
That's it.
Right?
And I'm willing. So one of the questions for all leaders and all people, what life could you architect if you didn't worry about the judgment and expectations of others, right? So how many people are sitting out there in a job they hate because mom or dad said, you'll never make any money as an actor, or you need to be a lawyer. You need to
Yeah.
be you have to do this. You must do that. All of
Yeah.
it's a set of armor for most people. It's just really hard to take off unless you can be in a community where that's what people celebrate. The final question would be, what's the mask you wear and what's it costing you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to show up smart. I need to show up like I have the answers. I need to show up happy. I need to show up. Well, wait a minute. Sometimes I want to show up sad. Sometimes I want to show up angry. Sometimes I want to show up just going, you know what? I'd like somebody to help me.
Yeah.
I don't do any of that. And so I don't get watered. I don't get fulfilled, and my energy is less. And then I'm drinking or drugs or overeating or all of it.
Yeah. And one final thing I want to say too, just to go back to, because it's not just investors. I mean, when you think about so what investors need to start investing in is not I'm just going to call it bullshit 3 to 5 year plan, because it's completely made up crap.
The only thing
I mean,
is the first year.
yeah,
You'll
at
either be
best.
on plan, under plan, or over plan, and then you can decide where you're going. Everything else is.
Well, what they should invest in is the competency of the team, the quality of the idea, the relevance of the idea in the market. And coming back to the competency of the team, what you're investing in is the team's ability to adapt to market conditions to continue moving forward towards the ultimate outcome of the vision. But the plan to get there is going to go through multiple iterations and changes. So don't invest in that plan, because that's not the thing to invest in. You invest in the idea and the competency of the team to pivot and adapt. That's what you're investing in.
Absolutely.
And we could say the same thing if you're not talking about traditional investment, where you put your time, where you put your energy, who you put your time into, who you put your energy into, whether that's, you're talking about as a leader with your employees, or you're talking about interpersonal relationships. It's the same calculation in a world of exponential change that requires adaptability. So great conversation as usual. We'll pick it up and continue next time. Thank you, everybody, for joining Dan and I today on the most important conversations about leadership.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at TMICglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.